Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, from race to recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Tom, how are you?
I'm fantastic as well, Kenny. And we would like to introduce you and to everyone, Jim Macaluso. Jim, I've been trying to think about how to introduce you, because Jim and I met back at Badwater as we were crewing a friend of ours, Chris Calamano. And Jim seemed like a normal guy. He was a good runner and he ran a lot. And we got a lot of stories, but Jim has turned out to be a bit of a freak, and in a good way, with lots of love. Got a lot of respect for Jim. Jim has got an amazing run streak going, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Jim, give us a little bit of background on you, because you've got some cool stuff.
So I was never an athlete. My least favorite sport was running. It's kind of a love-hate relationship, and I just one day. It's kind of a deep story. I used to be significantly overweight. I was about 100 pounds heavier than I am now. Wow. And running was part of the weight loss, and then diet, as we talked about during Badwater, was part of that as well. But so I was never an athlete, just found a little bit of a passion for running and kind of got addicted to it. And that's kind of how the streak started. So
a passion is an understatement. So take us through that turn that happened. I mean, what do you do? What's your background now? You're in the auto biz, right?
Yeah, been in the auto industry since 1997. Pretty much with the same employer since then.
Nice.
So
that's rare.
That in my business is definitely rare, but it's a good group. And they're very supportive of what I do with my running and stuff. So that always helps.
Oh yeah.
But as far as my background leading up to running, like I said, I was pretty overweight at one point in time, and thought I was doing the right thing, and played around with a whole bunch of different diets. I've done everything from like a carnivore type diet to a plant-based diet, and they both worked until they didn't for me. I developed a little bit of food anxiety, going to different places and not being able to eat certain things, and ultimately I'd fall back into the junk food diet, which was never a good thing. And then I had success on both, so I can't say either of them worked or didn't work.
Yeah.
So what was it about running that sort of what triggered that weight loss? Was it most people that are that heavy don't tend to want to run, right? They'll walk, they'll lose a few, but I mean, just the physiology of that much weight on joints and other things that just make it tough. What is it that kind of stuck with you about the running?
It was hard, and I saw results early in progress. So
that's great.
When I first started to run, I couldn't run a couple hundred feet without being winded. And then I just noticed the more I kept doing it, the further and further I could go. And it kind of just like that momentum I was gaining from doing it, even though I didn't like doing it, but I was seeing progress. So for me, that became like the new, the goals I would set. It'd be like, all right, let's see if I can do a mile without stopping. And then that became 2 and 3, and the rest is history after that. But just seeing that progress by putting the work in was really rewarding.
Was there a weight that you wanted to be at, or it was more of performance? I know when I was cycling, I first started cycling, I was pretty heavy, and I was trying to lose weight to cycle better. And then I was trying to, I was cycling to lose weight, and then I was losing weight to cycle better. Was there sort of a weight you wanted to be at, or are you just letting it be what it was, and the results are kind of what you were trying to get to?
Pretty much the same. There was a weight I wanted to get at, and then kind of what you did with your cycling, I did with my running. I wanted to lose a little bit more weight so I can get faster and be easier on my feet. So initially, under 200 pounds was the goal. And then once I hit that, I was still, there's still a little bit more to go. And then I just started taking running a little bit more serious, and then the weight started to fly off, to the point where I was probably eating more currently than I was when I was heavier, but due to the demand of the exercise. So it's kind of like a little bit rewarding in that regard. So
yeah. It's got to be challenging, because you've got to fuel your body properly. I mean, and as the distances took on, the thing is that when you're trying to lose weight, we try to coach people to say, hey, it's in the kitchen that you're going to lose weight, and the exercise kind of helps. But once you start you cross that line of training harder and going further distances. Now you need to eat more because you're going to lose too much. Your body's going to waste away. It's actually not going to recover. So how does that, I mean, your family jumped in on this? What, like?
Yeah, my wife is like my biggest cheerleader and support cast in all of this. So she's kind of followed along with every crazy diet regimen I've done. She's awesome in that regard. But as far as how I'm doing it now, it's just a moderation of everything. You know, I don't focus particularly on one type of food or one category of food. I never like to be labeled. So if like when I was eating like the meat-based diet, it was, oh, you're a carnivore guy. And when I was eating the plant-based, it's, oh, you're a vegan. And to me, I never wanted to classify myself that way. And when I was doing that, I would find myself kind of getting trapped in that. So when I just said, scrap it, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat in moderation. That's when it really started to work out well. But what I really noticed is kicked up my intensity, my exercise, the frequency of it all. I was always worried about how much I was eating. And I wasn't really worried about refueling as much as I was looking at that number. So it wasn't up until like probably the last year where I really started to focus on how much I needed to replenish and to feel those workouts. I'd skip breakfast all the time. I'd, miss lunch half the time. And that really caught up, it really hurt me, especially during racing season. I wasn't recovering good from my run. So I'm still figuring it out. I don't think I'll ever figure it out what's going to be the perfect balance, but I've gotten a lot better in the last year.
Yeah. And as we age, our bodies change, our metabolism changes, regardless of how active you are. You're going to have to keep chasing it the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So
what was that trigger? Like when you said you were doing the meat-based stuff, it has to be more than just, hey, somebody's like, oh, you're a carnivore. Was it the reaction that your body was doing, or was it you were feeling lethargic, or what was the trigger point that made you decide, hey, I'm going to try the plant-based to see how I feel? Well, that's not kind of, maybe I need to throttle that back. Was it performance-based, or was it like, this is how I'm feeling? Was it recovery-based? Like, well, I felt better afterwards, or what kind of led you through that decision point?
Yeah. So I was doing the ketogenic type diet, Atkins, whatever you want to classify it at. And I thought I was doing good. I was losing weight. I felt better. I visibly looked better. And I was like, and it'd been a long time since I had a physical. So I said, let me go make an appointment, get blood work done. Let's see where I'm at. So I go into the doctor's office, talking to the nurse, about to draw my blood, talking to the doctor, and they're telling me how great I look and how great everything's doing. So I walk out of there feeling like $1 million. I'm like, God, I figured something out. I don't have my blood work back at this point.
Yeah.
I get a phone call the next morning. He's like, hey, you need to get back in the office. All right. No idea, but I can tell in his voice it wasn't.
That's never good.
A good call. Yeah. It wasn't a good call. So I get in there and he's like, we really got to talk about this. And I kind of thought he was kidding, but then I kind of realized he wasn't. And he starts reading off all my numbers, my blood panel, my lipid panel. He's like, the most alarming thing is your cholesterol is like 340.
Wow.
Which is sky high.
Yeah.
And this was fasted. So, and my triglycerides were, I think, 800. My blood pressure was not normal. It's like 190 over 90 or 190 over 80, really high.
Wow. So he's the healthiest looking sick guy you can find, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what he said. He's like, whatever you're doing, it's working for you physically, but it's not working for you internally. Yeah. So rather than telling me what I could do to fix it on my own, he just starts labeling off all these prescriptions he wants me to take, stuff for my cholesterol, my blood pressure. I'm like, well, time out a second. I'm like, if I did this to myself, there's got to be a way that I can correct it. And he starts saying, hey, you could do things with diet and exercise, but you were just dealt a bad hand. It's genetics. So I don't
switch
take
doctors.
Yeah. Well, and at first I was pissed. I'm like, this guy just wants to throw me in a bunch of pills. It's his job. So I just started doing some research and looked at what I was doing, what I could be doing. So went to Dr. Google and just started typing in, how do I lower my cholesterol naturally? Or how do I reduce high blood pressure naturally? And I don't know if this was at the time, this was probably 2016 or 17. Everything was reverting back to, eat more fiber, eat more vegetables, and in some places were eliminate meat or reduce meat. But I went down this rabbit hole. So I was like, all right, cool. Let me dig a little bit deeper into more of a plant-based, not a full-on vegan plant-based, but just more of it. And I started watching documentaries. I think a lot of people have gone through this, and some of these documentaries you watch are really convincing. So after the second or third one, I'm like, I got to give this a shot. So I told my wife, I walked upstairs, I'm like, no more meat. She looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's it. That's what's destroying my blood work. So I went from eating pretty much, steak and some vegetables and chicken and everything to trying to figure out how to eat nothing but plants. And there was a ton of good recipes online. So I did that for a while, got my blood rechecked, and it was back to perfect. My cholesterol was normal. My triglycerides were normal. My blood pressure started going down. So that's how I made that transition to plant-based. And I developed like this, I had it with the low carb keto diet and with the plant-based diet, just going out and going to a birthday party or a graduation party, and I was never that guy. I was like, hey, make sure you have this for me type of person. So I would either not eat, or like, especially on a plant-based, I'd be eating a hot dog bun, because it was
that's all it's there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And after a while of doing that, I'm like, God, this is not good for me. Like, and I'm an all or nothing person. With the running streak, you can see it. It's either I'm doing something or I'm not doing it. So I wouldn't really break that rule of, just having a little bit here and there. And after a while of doing that, and started to get like loss of energy, like when I was doing the plant-based, and I was supplementing with, B12 and a few other things, but I wasn't getting enough for what my body was demanding, because I was running quite a bit. Even when I met Tom in 2019, so a couple of years in, I was still doing the plant-based diet, and I was running, at that time, probably 60, 70 miles a week. So
yeah,
it was
quite a bit.
I think you did. I think you ran about 70 miles with Chris on that race.
Yeah.
It was 135. You were out there falling asleep with him in the middle of the road.
Yeah,
So the irony is sort of you went back to a Mediterranean diet, right? So one of the best diets they keep talking about is a Mediterranean diet, which is basically lean, fish, lean protein, not a lot of it, right? Go to more, mostly plant-based, close to the core, olive oil, that kind of thing, right? It seems to be the one that people can stay on, and the one that does that. And not to defend doctors, but U.S. healthcare, the patient, the consumer has that mentality of whatever my problem is, just give me a pill to fix it. Absolutely. And so the doctors aren't I don't think they're much as pushing it as in that's the answer that 95% of the people want is just give me a pill to make this go away. And people are perfectly happy with that. I'm the same way as you are. It's like, hey, your cholesterol's creeping up. Here's a statin. No, I just need to, it's within myself. I need to go do that. But those are rare. So most Americans just want, here's your pill, and that pill took care of it. I don't have to deal with it. Let's go to Cracker Barrel, which, by the way, is a fantastic mashed potato.
They're very good.
So you mentioned this streak. So one of the things we haven't said yet is part of the reason why you're on the show is because you have this tremendous streak of running. If you could let the audience and viewers know what the heck this thing is, and then
what day are you on
into that.
Yeah, so the exact day, it's just over 1,100, almost 1,200 days. So I was finding myself falling into this, it's too rainy to run, or it's too windy to run, or too hot, or too cold. I can find any excuse not to do something, latch onto it, and it becomes real, and you just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right,
so,
Kenny?
Shut it.
So, but I just naturally found myself, I went from running 5-6 days a week to some weeks it was like 2 or 3. I'm like, man, I want to do this more. And I'm like, why am I not doing it? So I started did a deep dive on why I'm not doing it. And it was just making excuses. And I really wanted to do it more. So I'm like, I'm just going to do it every day. And I did it for like a week. And I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do this every day. So there's another podcast I listened to, and
Horror.
They put it out there that the start of January 2019. I think it was 2019. This is my third year, so whatever that makes it. So it'll be 2020 that they were going to start a running streak, and they were going to have a spreadsheet for it. We're all going to have like a little friendly banner back and forth and go for it. So I signed up for it. And that's really, I could see it on the spreadsheet. I could see where other people were at. I can track my distance, their distance. And then it became a game. It became fun. It became challenging. And so many people dropped off. There's a handful that are still doing it. I think there's only 7 left on the spreadsheet this year.
Wow.
But and some of those people are new. The one person that started this spreadsheet, she's still on there. I think she
That's
might
neat.
be one other guy. His name's Rich. He's still on there as well. But yeah, I just started doing it, and the rule was 1 mile a day, a minimum of a 15-minute mile pace.
Okay.
So
That's
I
legit.
just, not to gloss over it, because you glossed over the number. So to slow it down a little bit, you have been running every day consistently for how many days?
It was 3 years on January 1st of this year. So it was almost 1,200 days. I checked my phone, but I'm using it.
12. Okay. So you've ran consistently without fail, vacations, snow,
at least a
flu,
mile.
At least 1 mile.
But I think you've
at
done
minimum
more than
of 15
a mile.
minutes. But yeah, exactly. But at least 1 mile every day.
My average per day is roughly 9.5 miles a day since then.
That takes it to another level. Like,
that's funny.
See, I said he was a bit of a freak, but in a good way.
But it seems like your personality is one of, like, once you've decided you're going to do something. I mean, like you seem like, with your example, with your diet, even with your job, right? You've been there since 97. It's like, if you found something that works and it's going to do it, you're going to do it. How did you were a fairly experienced runner when you started. As you started stacking on days after days, how did your body react?
I gradually built it up. So like I said, back then I was 60, 70 miles a week. Now I'm anywhere between 100, 125, but I just gradually built up to it. And I'm not very good at listening to my body. So I'm sure I've ran through some stuff that I shouldn't have,
Yeah.
Not all pain is the same. And I'd always kind of just do the, let's go out and see test. And some days I was like, oh, this is not a day I should do, but I'm out here, I'm going to get that mile in. So there's a few of those. But the hardest ones are after the big events, the big ultras. Yeah. And I've found a way to do it every time. It's just something I'm going to put myself through no matter what.
So if you're on vacation, I mean, your wife supports you on all this and all that, right? And
does she run with you?
Maybe twice.
So when you're on vacation, it's just assumed, right? For you, it's like, hey, I'm having breakfast, so I just need to go get my run in. It's just part of your employer knows that. Everybody sort of knows that, right? It sounds like you have a support system that just kind of like, that's your thing.
Yep.
And I'm assuming some people are on you if you even consider. I mean, at this point, what do you do now? Is there I don't think there's an end in sight, right? I mean, it's sort of who you are, right?
Correct. Yeah. I have a couple people at work that are curious about it. People like to joke about it and have fun with it. But going back to your vacation comment, I was in the Keys from December 30th till January 8th. I ran over 140 miles the whole time I was in the Keys. So I definitely run during my vacations. To me, it was, my kids wanted to go fish. I went with some friends and their kids, and they're fishing. I wanted to run. Yeah. I made sure I did. I got a couple of 20-mile runs in. The first Saturday I was there was 22 miles, and then every day after that. And I've got a coach now. And I told him I was going on vacation. I'm like, don't change anything. I'm like, just take into account that I'm going from 20 degrees outside to 80. It's going to be a little adaptation. So I'll adjust. But
and what's your average pace? Because like you talk about going like 9.5 miles as your shorter runs. You're knocking that out a lot quicker than most people would knock out 9.5 miles. So what's your average pace?
So the first year, so Strava gives you this cool little recap, and the first year of the streak was like 3,300 miles at an average of 720 pace. The second year was roughly about the same, a little bit slower in the pace, like 730. Now that I've hired a coach, and he's like, you're just crazy, you're killing yourself running all these 7-minute miles every run. Now it's in that 8 to 8:30 range. It's slowed it down by about a minute a mile. And that was hard for me because I was always a numbers guy. I felt like I was going backwards. I was going slower. And quite honestly, that's like in the last 6-8 months since I've hired my coach, that's when my running's really taken itself to another level, is just slowing down and understanding what easy means. Like, easy, not a number, easy is a feeling. So I had to really input that. And I've learned so much in the last, 6 months since I've been coached by him, and he's a phenomenal coach. I'm fortunate to have him.
What was the reason for the coach? Are you doing runs that you just wanted to go faster? It sounds like you're doing ultra distance. So was the impetus for the coach to just get more efficient at it, get faster at it, or what made you decide to go after coach? I mean, that's a lot of miles. It seems like someone like you wouldn't naturally need somebody to go, hey, teach me how to run, but it's more than just teach me how to run, right?
Right. Yeah. I knew I was missing something, and I didn't know if it was something just beyond my capabilities that I needed to figure out. Like, if I'm doing everything and this is the result, then that's the result. But I've been in races where stuff was just great until it wasn't, whether it was a nutritional aspect or, injury, poor recovery or poor prep, whatever it was. And it was this summer. It's a 100-mile race, and I started the race off with a guy who was by far the favorite to win it. He's going for an Olympic trials qualifier in the marathon. He's like a 2:18 marathoner. He won Tunnel Hill at like 12 hours 14 minutes. So I started off this 100-mile literally right behind him for the first like half a mile, and he reaches back. He's like, "Hey, you want to run with me?" I'm running 7:30. So that was definitely not my plan. My plan was to go.
Your coach must have been like freaking out.
Yeah, I was thinking, 10-minute pace, it's 100 miles. So, but I hung with him for, God, it had to be 2 hours. And I felt like, man, there's something I could do this. I knew I could run that pace for that long, but I shouldn't have done it in a 100-mile race. But, I told him, like, here, go run your race. I'll run mine. And I backed off, and 40, 50 miles in, he wasn't that far ahead of me. He maybe was an hour ahead, which in an ultra isn't that much. So I stuck to my plan. I backed off. And then when the evening came around, it was getting cooler. I was like, I'm going to go faster again if I have it in me. And I still had the same legs I had in the morning and the evening.
Wow.
Nice.
So I knew I was doing something right, but I'm like, man, I got to figure that out. If I can just maintain that the whole way through, this would be an easy sport for me, but it never is. So after that race, I came home, and I finished like second or third in that race. It was my best 100-mile time was like 20 hours. Nice. And I was on cloud nine. I'm like, man, this is fantastic. I'm like, there's something more. So that's when I reached out to a coach, and I'm kind of a goof. I didn't want to hire just any coach. So I did some homework, some research, and I found out Camille Herron, who's probably the best ultra runner on the planet, they coach. So I fired off an email to him, and her husband Connor replied. She's like, Camille's not available to coach, but I am. I'm like, well, I don't know what's better, having the best ultra runner or having the best ultra runners coach. And we hit it off right away. We had a conversation about it, and he's been great for me. So he understands me. I told him about my streak. He's supportive of it, by which I was blown away that a coach would be supportive of it. And my training this week is 7 days and 120 miles. So
only an ultra runner coach would support a nonstop running.
Yeah.
He's huge on recovery. He definitely makes sure that he puts, most of my runs are what most would consider an easier recovery run, 80% of them. So he usually gives me one pretty big volume workout. Like tomorrow I got a big workout. It's like an hour and a half, but it's a pretty intense workout. And then strides are mixed in there, long runs. Yeah. But a lot of recovery.
By the way, your recovery run is what most people's like distance run is, just so we're clear on the scale of things. So you mentioned one of the things is you were kind of a slave to the time, right? 7:30, and it took a little bit into you. What are those aspects of that coach, other than like, what are those key things that they started changing about sort of your decision process or your mindset that you felt like really was a benefit?
I had to try it. So once, he let me kind of do my own thing. He sent over my program. He's like, run easy. Well, I don't know what, to me, easy wasn't at 7:30 because I did it all the time. Like, well, I know I can do it, and I do it all the time, so I'm just going to do it. And I sent him every run. So he sees him. He's like, you need to run easier, kid. He's like, you're going way too fast. He's like, what are you trying to prove? And he's like, just slow down.
Yeah.
All right. So I had no idea what that meant. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go until it feels easy. And I kind of found that pace, like that 8:30 felt. I mean, 7:30 to 8:30 doesn't sound like a big difference, but when you're used to running 7:30 all the time and you back it down to 8:30, it's a world of a difference. I'm like, I feel like I can go all day at this pace. Yeah. Like my long runs were enjoyable for the first time. Like I wasn't dead halfway through them. I wasn't looking for nutrition. I wasn't dehydrated. Sure. I felt good. So I started to believe in what he was. I mean, he's had no reason to guide me in the wrong direction. Yeah. And it started working, like it started clicking. So I immediately bought in. Like after a week, I was sold. I'm like, all right, I get it now. Like totally makes sense. There was some runs where I just catch myself going too fast to see if I still could. I'm like, slow down. But
just testing it.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to do, right? Like you said, it's so easy. Why not do the last couple of miles at speed just to see if I still got it? That kind of thing. Is there anything else he was changing kind of on that other than just speed? Was it was it like your approach to a race? How else was?
Yeah, definitely mental approach to the race, nutritional approach to the race, training leading up to a race. But the most interesting thing is he doesn't believe in much of a taper. So, and I had hired him
Really?
about a
That's
month.
interesting.
Yeah, I hired him about a month and a half before I had a 100-mile race coming up. And he doesn't send me my training that far in advance. 1 week, and I get it literally the day before. So I don't know what's coming up even next week. And I was kind of expecting a taper into a race, and he told me he didn't believe in much of a taper, but he doesn't really believe in any taper. So I had a double. The race was on a Saturday morning. I had 2 runs scheduled the Friday before. They were shorter, at 4 and 5 miles, but it's still, regular double run. And I lined up that day on the race day, and our goal was to, have a PR, break 20 hours. And he said, just trust in the process. He goes, you put in the work. I hadn't been being coached by him for a long point at that time, but from what he saw, he gave me all the confidence in the world. We chatted about it, and he's like, just go break 20 hours. So I just went out there, ran a pace, and I ended up winning the race in 15 hours.
No way. Wow.
insane.
Wow. Yeah,
so it was
amazing.
it was a monster PR. And I was in shock. Like that race was pretty unique for a lot of reasons. I made a lot of mistakes. I ended up falling asleep, like, I don't know, was it 80, 90 miles in the race? I sat at an aid station and just zonked. I had zero. So when I say I made mistakes, I definitely made mistakes, but my
How long
legs
were you
never
out?
tired.
Was it just like 15 minutes and you woke up, or
20 minutes? So
no
20
minutes.
A 20-minute nap and still win the race.
It was,
But you felt good when you were done, right? You were like 20 minutes. That's perfect.
Well, I told the aid station person, I'm like, hey, give me like 10, 15 minutes to sleep, maybe 20. And, but I had a pretty good lead. Like, everyone was telling me where I was at for a lot of the race, and I was trying to channel it out, but I was listening to some of them, and I knew I had a pretty significant lead. But there was a 50K that starts at night. So there's 50K left of the race. So I started kind of with them. A lot of them were way back. And then when I'm napping, I heard footsteps, and I had no idea if it was somebody I didn't care. My goal wasn't to win the race, but I knew I was in a position too. So I can't say I didn't care, but it wouldn't have bothered me if I didn't. But I heard footsteps. So I thought somebody had passed me and I was going to come in second or third. There's a video on my Facebook. When I crossed the finish line, she told me I won the race. I almost like, what? I had no idea. I knew I did well, but I didn't know I'd won the race. So that's a pretty fast race. It's the Hennepin 100 is a really flat, fast race. It's got maybe 1,000 feet of gain over 100 miles. It's on an old.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's on a canal, so it's literally at the level of the water. So.
Do you prefer on those 100-milers? Do you prefer a hillier one? Do you prefer a flat one? What's sort of your jam?
It's flat, yeah. Flat.
Okay.
I'm a road runner. I live in Illinois, so a mountain out here is like a 50-foot hill. My treadmill's got better hills than the road, so
that's funny.
Nice. Oh, that's
so
funny.
when you talk to people, I mean, it must be a little, for you go to a dinner party, or like you say, you meet new colleagues and all that, and you mentioned those things. I mean, it's for people that run marathons, just a marathon. It's wow, you do marathons, right? Here you are. Not only are you doing, 100 milers, you're averaging about 70 plus miles a week, but you're also have this streak going. Do you like to tell people that, or do you find it sometimes kind of annoying what? I mean, you probably told you were crazy, 988 times in the last
a day.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
How do you, I mean, do you just sort of like, yeah, that's kind of who I am, and so yeah, whatever, or is it, do you sigh when you have to say it, or when people start asking?
It depends. Some people I can see they're kind of having fun with it or joking about it. A lot of people tell me what they're training for. So a few people at work, like, oh, I'm doing a 5K. Like, yeah, it's just that they'll say it's just a 5K. I'm like, time out. I'm like, you're doing something that not a lot of people are doing. Like, forget the distance. Like I've suffered more in 5Ks and some 5Ks than I have in some 100-mile races. So the distance doesn't mean anything. So those people, I just try to tell them, don't minimize what you're doing based on what I'm doing. Like what you're doing is awesome.
Bravo.
Doesn't matter the distance.
That's
so.
It.
And then you get a lot of people that just tell me I'm crazy. It's going to be bad for my knees. I'm going to have all the problems down the line. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, you have a hard time getting off your ass, off your chair. And you're telling me it's bad for my knees?
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm going to have the best knees when I'm 65, but I know how I feel right now. So it's mixed. I don't mind talking about it. Anybody who's actually interested in it. I love talking. I love running. I love everything about it. So and if it helps one person, don't have a big social media presence, and I do only really post my running stuff on there. It's more for my family and friends to see. My parents, they have a house in Florida and in Michigan, and I'm in Illinois, so they get to see it that way too.
Cool.
But yeah, to me, it's just part of what I do. And if anyone wants to talk about it, I'm more than happy.
Yeah. Do you find too that sometimes I notice when you talk about, and Tom, you probably know this too, like when you tell people what you're doing, like you're doing Ultraman or you're doing an Ironman or you're doing a 100-mile run, sometimes you hear this pause and then they tell you like the 14 medical conditions they have, or else they'd be totally out there. Do you get that a lot too? Like I totally do that, but I got this knee thing I'm dealing with, and
I tell you, the knee seems to be everyone's reasoning
Achilles
not
heel.
to do it.
Yeah.
Not the smoking, not the drinking, not the drugs. It's the knee. So
yeah,
the poor lifestyle choices. Knees. Actually,
It's all about the knees.
About it. I'm telling you, it's all about the knees. And knock on wood, that's the one issue that it seems to not bother me. Is everything else bothers me. My calves, my thighs, my glutes, my arms. The knees are fine. So
yeah, just Tom, I've got a torn
PSA.
meniscus that I had previously, and that's the reason. I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
So when you talk to people, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that ask advice, right? And so so let's kind of chunk that out into 3 sort of sections. So if you have a new runner coming at you, if you have sort of an experienced runner that wants to go to do the hundreds, and then if someone's wants to try to follow you on the daily thing, we'll divide it into sort of 3 sections, right?
Yeah.
So what do you tell that new runner? And we'll start with that first.
Yeah, that comes up quite a bit, especially around the new year. Everyone's starting their, their new life. How do you get into running? It's just one day at a time. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's a process.
Yeah.
I tried to make the mistake by doing too much too early, and I paid for it. Either with injury or fatigue or just lack of motivation. And I would always tell them, just do what you can for that's comfortable until you can't do it anymore. And then the next time you go out, whether it's a day later or 2 days later, try to do that or a little bit more. But baby steps, pretty much. It's the old walk before you, or crawl before you walk mentality. So with those, and I've gotten good feedback on that. The people that are kind of casual runners that want to start doing a little bit more, it's more of the same. Like you can't run every day unless you build your body up to be able to do it, especially 9-10 miles a day. It's not sustainable if you have a pretty solid background. I mean, even when I stopped taking an off day during the week, I felt that recovery day was so important, just in how I felt. So, and then the people that want to get into the hundreds, most of the people I meet that run are in the ultra community. The few of the 50Ks that I showed up to, people are curious about that. I actually had a good conversation with a guy who's a totally seasoned ultra runner. He's done he just did Western States. He's done every Padua. He's done every big mountain race. He actually wants to do the race that you just did, Tom. No business.
The no business. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of his goal races, but he's never done a flat 100. So he was very curious on how I approach that. And this is a guy that's he's probably got 10,000, running miles underneath his belt, just racing. He's a freak for those 200 milers and those 48-hour events, which I have zero interest in right now in my life.
Which is funny. This is what cracks me up, right? You are running for thousands of days, right? You're doing hundreds, and then when you talk to somebody about like a 200, you're like, I have no business for that. I think that's what makes it kind of hilarious, right? I would automatically assume a 200 miler for you would be like, well, who cares, right? Once you get past 100, you're insane anyway. I mean, you guys, 50K and above to me is like,
once
okay, now, but that's funny. So why is it that the 200 is the limit? Like, what is it about the 100 between the 1 and the 2 or the 48 hour that cracks me up?
Yeah, I think doing something for a day, as crazy as it is, that's why I'm really happy I found a way to get a little bit faster so I can be out of there a little earlier.
I haven't found that speed.
Oh, you'll find it. I've had some pretty rough fails at my early on. I got a little ahead of myself my first 100, and I think I'm sure I told Tom when we were at Badwater about my Keys 100 experience.
Oh
horrible. But just the fact of being, our good friend Chris, he loves these crazy long races, and I hear him and he's telling me what he goes through during. I'm like, I just couldn't. It's not for me. I'm never ruling it out. I'll never say never when it comes to something like that. Moab 240 is on the radar, but not for a while.
Bad water on the radar.
Yeah, it was for a little while. I'm gonna probably put a hold on that. I think I'm gonna wait a couple more years. Financially, it's really expensive to do bad water. I never got the amount from Chris, but adding it up in my head, it's a very, and this sport isn't cheap, especially if you want to go outside of your hometown. I mean, and if you bring crew, the etiquette is to pay for your crew and pay for their flights, and it adds up quick. I mean, I brought just to the Keys. We did the Keys 100 again this year. I finally finished it after 3 attempts, by the way. So I'm happy about that. And that was ugly. But you're talking $7,000-8,000, So in bad waters, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're kind of at the mercy of the vendors that are out there for lodging. So it gets pricey, but
so help again. Some of our viewers aren't kind of well versed. You guys are sometimes speaking in shorthand, right, on some of this stuff because you're so well versed on it. So when you're looking at give us I'm going to be the everyday man.
Sure.
Give us sort of an idea when you're getting set for 100-mile run. What is that structure? You say you have a crew. What specifically do you need to bring? How long are you there? How many people does it really take to crew? And when you're crewing something, what does that mean? What is it? Is it there to hand you socks and a Coke, or give us a kind of a makeup of what that looks like?
Sure. So for any 100-miler, for the most part, majority of them have aid stations, so you can do them uncrewed. If your goals are aligned with not having a crew and you don't need quick handoffs and you're not really racing it for a PR or something, you can use all the aid stations are totally stocked perfectly. They have more options than you can think of. But doing it on the crewed aspect of it all, 2 or 3 minimum, on a 100-mile, you got to make sure someone stays awake, because even if your goal is 20, you never know what's going to happen. You could end up being out there 35, 40 hours, whatever the cutoff might be. So got to make sure you have enough people to stay awake for you. And they're doing everything from, I mean, I don't know of a really good word. They're like your servants when they're out there. I mean, they're there for you. When we crewed for Chris, anything he needed, we gave him.
It's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work, and you to do it right. It's a lot of work to be prepared, to wipe feet, to pop blisters, to tape things up, to change socks, to allowing people to sleep, to watching the clock, and feeding. There's a lot to, and it's good, but it's
so if
rewarding.
I recall, like on the Barclays, like they would, the Barclays is the infamous one where they're doing 5, that guy's insane. But it seems like when, and tell me if this is right, like you're sitting in a chair, right? Your job as the runner is all you're thinking about is, okay, this hurts, I need this. And they may be ready to give you something, but you're like, if I eat that right now, I'm going to vomit on you, right? So I'm assuming it's sort of a little bit of a slow NASCAR, right? I need this, I need this. Socks feel good. I'm assuming there has to be some personality that you, and some trust, that there's some people that are like, look, you need to stop for a second, do this, or you need to do this, that you need that person in your corner to make sure that they look out for you, not killing yourself, right?
Absolutely. So I haven't been fortunate enough to have anyone crew with me that is an ultra runner that's experienced it. So that's been a little bit interesting for me. It's my wife who's crewed me at every race I've been crewed. Has been my wife, and my good friend and his wife have crewed me, and my kids. So but they do everything, like Tom said, from wiping feet, popping blisters, and basically the nutrition aspect of it all, and making sure, is when I transfer out my water bottles, if I bring one back that's half full or didn't drink enough, I'll get, next time I see them, I'm going to get smacked for it. Like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you need this stuff. Because
that's what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah. When you're doing these races, you're focusing on how you feel at that moment. So you might feel great, 50 miles into the race, so you back off a little bit on your nutrition. Well, 5 miles or an hour or 2 hours later, that's going to catch up, and you're going to feel every bit of that. Your electrolytes are going to go down, your hydration is going to go down, your general calories, if you don't focus on that. And those are mistakes I made at the last race, was just let my nutrition slip away, and I paid for it. So
and that's why you want trustworthy people that will be there for you, because if something happens where you start to bonk, you really start to lose energy, you're not able to make decisions. Ultimately,
Right.
they become the person that makes the decision. Your crew chief, the person that's in
Yeah.
charge of your crew, can make the decision to pull you from the race. If the medical team doesn't do it, they can do that. So you need to have that trust in that person that they're going to do what it takes, and to not pull the trigger too soon
Right.
if things go bad. And they don't always go bad, but sometimes they do. And sometimes it gets really bad, and it's a matter of managing what you're going through. Like I think Chris's stomach was turning on him, and we couldn't get food in him for a little bit, so we managed to get him going along, and then we had to keep kind of forcing him some stuff. You need to have this now, you need to try this, get this, and we got him back on his mode and going again. But you need crew to do that for you, and
Sure.
and make those decisions. It's
Absolutely.
It feels like it may test the marriage too. Like, I'm not wholly sure.
It's
if
never
my
recommended that your spouse be on the crew. Like that's like rule number one. But it's
Rule number
you
one.
and I have wives that
Violated that
are
rule.
amazing that have been through it. And there's the one race that I did where Wendy had to push through watching me suffer more than she's ever seen before. With the Ultraman with the broken foot, where that was the most painful thing, and that was not easy for her, right? So, and that's where it is when it goes south. Watching someone you love go through the suffering, and like most people can't handle that. Right?
Well, and I think to your
Becomes
point,
tough.
you're gonna suffer. So it's that hairy edge between, do I just let them go because they're gonna come up? Where if it's a loved one, they're gonna look at you differently in the fact that their jobs their whole life, right? You signed up to be the protector, right? You signed up to, and trying to get that person to push through. My wife and I've done Ragnar, that's a much smaller race, but we've done Ragnar together twice, and we seem to get along really well on that one. I had a 9-mile stretch where things were falling off, things were going really badly. The heat was a lot more than I expected for the middle of the day. And, she came out 3 miles, doesn't say a word. And I had 3 miles to go, and I just handed her the band, and she finished the 3 for me. And it was like, it's like, she knew it, right? She was like, just give it to me. And I'm like, God, thank God. There wasn't. So it's interesting to me to go back to the Florida thing. Like you were saying that, you had 3 of them, and this is the 3rd one you've done. Given your experience, and given the fact that you're running every day, one would think that, you should be able to knock these out. What was it about Florida that it took you 3 times? What lessons learned did you learn from that one?
The first time I just wasn't ready to do it. I did my first ultra was in North Carolina. It's called Badwater Cape Fear. That's actually where I met Chris in 2019. It was a 52-mile or 51-mile run. I did good. I felt good after. I was sore as hell, but like mentally, physically, I recovered fast. And they had a flyer. So the race director of Badwater is really good friends with a gentleman named Bob Becker, who runs all of his races. And he was hosting another race in Florida, and the pamphlet was in there. It was called the Keys 100. My wife's like, "Oh, you should do that." I'm like, "Oh." Well, that turned into, let's sign up for it. So, and this was only a few months after. This is the longest run I'd ever done by far. Like, just flat out not ready for it. I got there, was running, and I blew up. Like, really blew up. 30 miles in, my wife pushed me back out there for another 14, and I DNF'd to like 44 miles in. The second time around so it was supposed to be in 2020. COVID happened. So that race got pushed to 2021. And I thought I had learned a whole bunch, going there. It's the only race I've ever gotten blisters in. Like, my feet were like ground beef. They were gross. So I read about it, took measures to hopefully eliminate the blisters, in about the same spot. And the first time I did, I started getting blisters again in hot spots, like 30 miles in again. And I pushed and pushed and pushed, and I made it to like mile 70 something. And I was pissed. I wasn't happy. I was like, man, what am I doing wrong here? Like, something's not right. So I wrote that race off forever. I'm like, I'm never doing that race again. It's just not my race.
Yeah.
So fast forward, not too much longer after that, we're sitting at my friend's house, and my wife, they have a relay option. And my buddy says, hey, we should go back down to the Keys, and all 4 of us do the 100 as a relay. And my wife chimes in and goes, yeah, well, since Jim can't finish the 100.
Oh, big
snap.
So as
Wow.
she says that, I grab my phone and I sign up for the race. I'm like, well, I
You
better
seem
be
like the
able-
type of personality that's a big giant FU, and I'm going to go do this, right?
So that was
Wow.
the moment where I eliminated my No More Keys 100 model, and I signed up for it again. And I think I became a better runner, since that. I'd finished some other 100s since then. And I signed up and we went there. And again, it was more of the same, really. I just was not going to not finish that race this time around. And I didn't show a lot of the issues that I was having in my crew. My wife was there. My friend and his wife were there. So they took a lot of time out to support me, and they were awesome the whole time.
Yeah.
And there was no way I was not going to get across that. It was like a 25-hour finish, and it was ugly. Like my wife did the last 15, 18 miles with me, and we literally just slogged. Like I was dead.
Wow.
So what did you say to her when you got across the line? Was there any sort of like, smarmy, like,
little snarky reply?
you're like,
no, it was.
you want to say that again? You want to say that again?
Yeah, it's so
all smiles. We had been talking about it as we were walking through. We were just kind of talking about everything, our kids, and about finishing the race when we had about 5. So we put that behind us at that point. Once she knew I signed up, after she had made that comment, she knew I was going to finish it one way or the other. So I would have crossed that was a race I had to get done. So
yeah, I get that. So are your kids runners too?
No, not at all.
They hate running.
How old are your kids?
15 and 12.
And they're like, no.
No, they are both in a lot of. My youngest is in basketball, baseball, football. He snowboards. My oldest is in basketball. He was in football. He's done with that now, and he still does baseball. So they're active. They're athletes. They're athletic, but they do not like running. That's how they get. That's their punishment for school.
It's still school's punishment. Yeah. We need
Even
to stop
in baseball.
Yeah,
I try to get my kids. My kids are in their 20s. They were cross country runners and track and through high school, and then the end of high school they're like, I am never running again. Like they hated it because it was just constant, and it was a lot of pressure, right? I mean, you're going from cross country to, my oldest one was literally throwing up in a bush when he got done with the race, that kind of thing. And he's like, look, so none of them are running, let alone I'm trying to get them to do a triathlon. That's just not going to happen. They're in their 20s, and I'm waiting for them to get old enough where they start getting sedentary and they're like, I got to do something with my life. And then I'll be like, welcome. But it's
the mid-30s.
Not at that stage
mid-30s
yet.
is where everybody switches
so
into that gear.
if I'm alive by then, it's like I come to the dark side. But none of them have done that yet. That's funny.
Nice.
So I think the thing that I keep going back to is that trigger in your head. I'm trying to determine, is it just is it a personality thing with you? Is it like, like you said, you're bound and determined, right? Is it just, it becomes a part of you? Because I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to pull out is sort of a larger lesson for people on this isn't just about, you going over 1,000 days. It's the idea that you've committed to something, you're going to do something where it's become so part of your habit that it feels weird not to. And we're trying to get to people. And what I love about what you said is the word just needs to be, and I just said that, the word just needs to be removed from that, right? I just did a 10K or I just did a 5K. How do you help people try to say, hey, just there's that determination in your brain that I'm trying to figure out, how do I bottle that and give it to other people? How do you tell those other people, I guess? And if I'm rambling on, I'm trying to figure out just how to do that.
I just made it part of something, what I do. I mean, we brush our teeth every day. Hopefully we all shower every day. There's a lot of things that we do every day. We sleep every day, So for me, this is just what I'm going to do every day. And then after doing it, 30 days became 60 days, 90 days. And I hit a year, and I was actually going to stop at a year, but then I was like, well, I don't have a reason to stop. Well, let's just keep going. But now it's to the point where I'll actually get a little anxious. If I don't get my run out in the morning and I got to wait till the afternoon when I get out of work or the evening, I have like an anxiety about it. Like I want to do it. Like I don't want to do it, but I want to do it at the same time. And, and my kids, I put it out there. My kids know I do it. My family knows I do it. Coworkers know I do it, and it gets brought up. And I don't want, if I'm physically able to do it, I don't want to be like, well, I just stopped just because I stopped, or I didn't feel like doing it. But I think after, it's like anything else, like you start a habit, whether it's a good or a bad one. And once you've created that habit, you keep going back to it. So fortunately for me, and here, I'm not saying that running every day is a good thing, especially I've ran on days where I know I shouldn't have ran. I actually was hospitalized after a race. And when they told me they were admitting me, I wasn't worried about my health at that point. I was like, shit, my streak might be over. And I actually made up an excuse to the nurse to go to my car to get my laptop. I told her I had to do work stuff. I was going to go run a lap in the parking lot, and I started to. And I saw her staring at me out the door. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is, at some point I had to realize.
You got an IV bottle, you're going.
I had a PICC line in my arm because they were giving me and this
just like, I need to make 15 minutes, just 15 minutes. Just
and I kept saying, when am I getting out of here? When am I getting out of here? I don't know why they gave me so many tests as they did, but it was kind of cool. I learned a lot about my blood that day. And what it's like a day after an ultra, because I went in there a day after a race. Actually the day after I went in there. And I just kind of, at that point, I was like, man, this is over. The run streak is over. This was just back in November. And I told my wife, I told my kids, I'm like, well, this is the one thing that's going to be done with the streak. And lo and behold, somehow the nurse miraculously walks back in at like 7 o'clock at night. She's like, great news, you're being discharged. I'm like,
I'm going for a run.
You bet your ass I did. I got home and I hopped on the treadmill and banged out a couple of miles and went to bed.
And you're like, all good.
And your journey is kind of neat, because I think, you were obese, right? And the idea that it's just like, it's a little bit at a time, It's like you said, you didn't wake up, not doing anything or sedentary, and all of a sudden you're doing running every day. I mean, this was an evolution. And I think that's one of the things that folks, and I know, Tom, when you talk to people that are trying to figure out how to do like Ironman, they always think of the bigness of it, right? It's 140. It's like, you don't think that, you think in small segments. And I'm assuming that's what you guys do on the hundreds, right? Look, I'm going to the aid station, and then I'm going to go to the next aid station, and then I'm going to the next aid station. And I think it's the same way to get started for people on like you said, it's their fitness journey is probably just now starting. It's a newer year. How do I think it's just, you start stacking up small little victories. Would that be a fair assessment?
100%. Like, and that for me with the running, like every time that I would go a little bit further, that was that little victory I had. And that's when I started to see the momentum, and I started to see progress. I think where a lot of people that I've talked to, where they start something and they stop, they fall in that excuse mill, that time seems to be the number one thing. I just don't have the time. And that used to be one of my excuses. I used to, now I'm fortunate where my hours at work are much better, but I used to work 12, 15-hour days, and I always lived an hour away. So there'd be days I'd be out of the house for 14, 16 hours. Yeah. So, and this is while I was starting off in my running journey with the streak. So there's 24 hours in a day, and I looked how much time I was screwing around on my phone. And you look at screen times, like I spent 3 hours on, playing a game or Facebook or Google, whatever it was. And it's like, I could have been doing something then. So I knew I had the time. I just actually had to do it. Yeah. So I started, 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I would squeeze those runs in at 11 o'clock at night. And it just, there is time, that's the biggest excuse. I think that people, you have to, if you want something bad enough, you got to make time, 24 hours in a day is a lot.
You got to prioritize it. Once you make it a priority, once you make your health a priority, once you make your family a priority, then it goes to the top of the list, right? It needs to be up in the top 3. And then the consistency, as you said, is the same thing. Just, it doesn't matter the distance. Just get out and move your body. Get up in the morning, move your body for 10 minutes, but do that every day. And then you can do 20 minutes, and then you can do more, and then you can decide to do other things. But if you don't get started, what was it? Is it the Strava numbers were saying that, I think it was this weekend, everyone goes about 14 days. I heard anywhere from 14 to 20 days into January before they give up on their goals. That's 80% of the people give up on their goals at that point. They go really hard for 2 weeks. They don't see results. They get tired. They're sore. So they take a few days off and they never come back to it again, right? They never get out to that first plateau of actually, okay, now I can get some results from fitness, because that's like 6 to 8 weeks before you actually start to get the benefits. They're like, well, I'm supposed to have all this energy. Well, like, I'm tired. Well, no shit. It's just not, you're 2 weeks in, you're not doing anything yet.
And that's why I skip January altogether, right? I don't start until February.
I just start going back to the gym.
Get everybody out of the gym too.
Yeah, so it's clear now. So, but it's that consistency, right? It's that little bit. little bits, just do a little bit. And then that
Yeah.
consistency turns into a habit, and the habit turns into a nightmare for your family, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go.
Nightmare for the amount of shoes I have to buy.
Exactly, right?
That's
You
my
gotta
biggest
budget for that.
expense right now is shoes. But yeah, I think a lot of people when they start, they want to see his results too fast, and they expect all these changes to happen overnight. It took them 15 years, to put their body in the shape that they're in. It's not going to happen overnight. And if you just find, some people need a coach, some people are self-motivated, some people need that outside force to go, to push them along, and whatever that is, they got to find it, because I see it all the time. You show up at a gym on January 1st or January 10th, it's packed. You go there on the 11th, it's empty. And a lot of it's just people didn't, accept the fact that they needed to take a day off or recover. It sounds funny me saying day off, but recover.
It's
but
true.
it's a
But
lot
you
of
didn't
that's what it
start
is.
off with the streak, right? You started
No.
off like how
No,
long?
I ran
Yeah.
a couple of years. Yeah, it was several years of running pretty heavily before I did the streak.
Before the streak kind of took hold. So you gotta everybody's gotta think long term, like this is a lifestyle, basically.
Right.
It doesn't
And I think you're an anomaly on this one, right? I mean, you're self-aware on that one. That
There's
like you
more
said,
of
there's
us than you
7. Well, there's 7 on the list, but I mean,
On that
of
sheet.
the crazy, you guys are like at the tip of crazy.
when you look
right?
at 8
I mean, you know
billion
that, right?
people in the world, or whatever the number is, there's about 100 people like Jim. So that's 0.0000001.
Yeah, I like the fact that Jim looks at the 200 milers like, and the people that are doing 48, like those guys are crazy, right?
Those guys, man,
I wonder what those guys do. Who do they look at and go, those guys are crazy, right?
I'll tell you what, this sport is so cool. So you can have athletes at every level, from complete novice beginners, don't have any idea what they're doing, to elite athletes that are sponsored and paid, and they line up at the same races. And the weird thing to me about this sport is all the accolades and all the attention seems to go to the people at the top. Nothing gets to the people at the back, it really seems. But those are the people out there that 30, 40 hours, and some races that are taking people 12 to 15 hours. And I always I actually talk to them more than I talk to the people at the top, because I want to get that mindset. I want to get that mentality. I want to see what they went through, because someone who finishes a race in 15, 18 hours, it's a long time. It's grueling. But they had a lot less adversity and a lot less decisions to make and a lot less challenges to overcome than that person that was out there for 25, 30, 40 hours. So
they're going through some stuff, right? I mean, that's some demons, some battles, and they're, and the mentality I see from that. But that's why I think this sport is so awesome, because there's every level of fitness is in there. Anyone that wants to get into it can eventually find a way to do. You don't even really have to be super trained to finish 100 miles.
No, all shapes and sizes too. It's fantastic.
It's great. It's a great sport, and there's so many races out there now that actually do reward the back of the pack and the middle of the pack, and they do. They had the golden hour that they do at Western States, as little publicity that they do, which I think is awesome, because those people deserve just as much credit as the people at the top, and people ask me what the difference is from when I first started running, when I was a 25, 30 hour finisher, to being able to go sub 20 into 15-hour range. And it's just the amount that you want to dedicate to it. You don't, I wasn't doing as much as I am now before. So the more I put into it, and the more I learned, and the more I recovered and whatnot, then I became a faster, stronger runner at that. But I had to do all that stuff and fail before, and be slower, and not train as much before when I started, to now where it's a crazy amount of running. It's 15 hours, 18 hours a week just in running. So I mean, before I wasn't doing that. So if you want, this is a sport where you can kind of limp into it and do what you want to do, and guide your way through it. And if you want to get better and you get a good coach, or you have the right plan and process, you can definitely get faster at it. There's no doubt. You can get better. Cool. I'm 41 and I'm getting faster. So
that's cool.
It's the key. That's the key. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. I had a thought I was going to add to that, and I just totally forgot about it. But one of the things that I love the most about the endurance sport world, and as you go longer distances, it seems to be more prevalent, is when you finish the race, everyone congratulates you. As you said, the first place to last place doesn't matter. Not one of them asks you what your time is.
No.
All they say is, did you finish it? Yeah, congratulations. And they treat you just like you won the race.
absolutely. And that's what hooked me into it, because the first time I finished 100, it was the experience when I won 100 and when I first finished 100 wasn't a whole lot different. You know, it was a little bit more ceremonious at first. I was the first person across, so it was special in that regard. But after that, it was like I was just another runner, which I wasn't expecting to be anything more than that, which was awesome. And I actually went back the next. I went back to my hotel and slept, and then we came back in the morning and watched other people finishing 100 miles, and that was so much fun. You know, seeing people that were out there, you know, another double the amount of time that I was out there, and seeing them finish, and that was fun to go and congratulate them. They had no idea that I'd won the race before, and I didn't care. I wasn't broadcasting that. Just being able to go there, like I saw people do that for me in the past, where I saw that person that I heard whispers won the race, came back and they're high-fiving me at the finish, you know, 10 hours later. So just a cool sport in that regard. You know, it's a small sport, but it's got a big reach in that regard.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah. Cool. What else is going on, Jim? What's next? What races you have coming up? Or
so the only thing I have on the calendar right now is Javelina 100 in October.
Okay.
I'm between two races right now for the spring. My coach is trying to kind of put something together to last minute, so in mid-February. If that doesn't happen, I'm probably going to do Jackpot 100 in March. That's in Vegas. That's a fun one. It's a nice little 1.1 mile loop or something. So
100 miles, really?
And a loop, yeah. But I'm used to
gosh.
that. My street that I live on is a loop, and it's 1.1 miles. So I do that. I did that Sunday, 20 miles of it, just round and round we go. So I'm definitely mentally prepared for a race like that. And then in the summer,
that's insane.
I'm not sure about the summer. I definitely want to pick a race in there for this summer, but I'm not sure what it's going to be.
Yeah. It's funny that it feels like, when you guys talk about 100 milers, you're traversing, you're fording rivers and fighting off bears and coyotes. You're in this, some sort of, like, you always think of Western states, right? Where it's got this just beautiful, you're going through, Tahoe to through the, and then you're like, no, I'm going to go on a 1.1 mile loop for 100 miles in Vegas and dry and disgusting. And I want to stab my eye when I'm halfway through, but that kind of thing. But yeah, that's funny. Just burst the bubble for me on what a really cool 100 is. So
they come in all shapes and sizes.
Well, hell, I could do that. I mean, geez.
I'll tell you what, everyone minimizes these flat and fast ones, and those have a pretty low finish rate, because a lot of people, they go out hard and they go out fast.
Yeah.
And the wheels come off quick,
At
least I haven't done any mountain type races. I've done some hillier, 100 Ks and 100 milers, and they slow you down, and they definitely, it helps you, going at these things too hard and too fast. It's a lot of bad stuff happens.
Well, you come down to no business,
man.
Yeah, you come down to no business. I'll crew for you if you do no business.
There you go. Just do no business.
I heard that race. Yeah, that's supposed to be an epic race, and I can't believe you chose that for your first 100.
I'm not very bright. My wife was nice enough to send me a video that somebody had sent her from at work or something, and said, "Hey, there's these state parks and stuff that are really nice and beautiful. You should go out there in Eastern Tennessee." And sent this thing, and she found the video, and she's looking at it. She goes, "Hey, look at this. This is really nice." She said she hit send, and then she went, instantly regretted it, because my instant response was, "Well, this looks like fun."
That is a brutal
I didn't
race.
do enough research into it. I would never recommend that as a first 100.
Oh, no.
I would never recommend it as a first 100. It was like I scared the crap out of myself, and I had to do a lot of work and put a really good plan together to follow that. And I only had one crew, because we had issues, and Wendy wasn't able to be there, and my buddy had flown in and never experienced crewing before, had never done ultra distance races, anything, and he kicked butt. My buddy Jerry,
that's awesome.
took care of me in a way that's just it was incredible. So everything kind of fell into place, but it could have gone wrong so many ways.
Oh, sure.
So
sure.
Yeah,
that's the ultra world, man. And at any given time, anything could go wrong.
Yep.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
It's
inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not. It's not how. It's when. It's definitely going to happen.
Well, we'll certainly keep watching the streak and going through. What's your Insta? Because you have it on Instagram, right? Is that where
I
you
have
put
it
up
on Strava? All my runs are on Strava. It's a public profile, so anyone's more than happy to go look at that if they want to bore themselves with a run every day.
There's a few people that follow those numbers. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, Facebook. I might be up to 50 friends on Facebook. So that's it's a lot of the races I finished I put on there, and some of the the streak milestones I put on there. But yeah, I'm not huge on social media.
Yeah,
I'm
because you're out running.
I'm out running,
which is the proper thing to do. So
There you go.
but everything is on Strava. So.
yeah, well, good
There
luck
you go.
with the streak and everything
you.
else. Staying healthy.
Thank you.
Really appreciated chatting with you today. It was great
Thanks
to
for having
have
me
you
on.
Yeah, it's
Thanks for having me
fantastic.
on.
So everybody, give your comments and feedback. Subscribe to the channels. 5 stars, thumbs up, all that good stuff. That helps the algorithm get out there, and we can get a bigger expanse on this. We're having a great year. We've got some great guests coming up as well. And so thanks everybody. We appreciate all your support. And Kenny, Jim, we'll catch you on the next one.
We'll see you.